Alrighty. Well, this is the first interview on Media. I'm honored to have with me my guest here, one Ryan Franceschina. Say hello, Ryan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Franceschina, also known as Pentuple online.
What a pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, it came a long way for this.
Yes, right across the coldie. So we'll get formalities straight out of the way. You and I have known each other for a very long time.
Yes.
And so conducting an interview is inherently different than with somebody that you're, building those formalities with initially. Yeah. And so I would just like to give you an opportunity first to introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? How would you define yourself in as few words as possible?
Well, I would say I'm a Christian, I am an attorney, and I am now recently a Texan. So, because I grew up across the street from Bobby, but I have moved to Temple, Texas to work with CJ, who, as many of you know. And I'll be doing civil rights law and constitutional law down there, probably for the next foreseeable future.
And so you graduated law school in
2022 in December. So I took the February 2023 bar exam, and I practiced in Maryland for the last 2 years, and in the process of moving down to Texas. The disclaimer: I am an attorney in Maryland, not yet in Texas, and I have to say that explicitly for the next 6 months until I get my license. So.
And Maryland being a UBE state, it made the transferring over to there quite easy.
Yep, just transfer score. And
so while you've been in Maryland, your focus in law has been on?
Property is the real answer, but it was a pretty boring job, so I wouldn't bore with the details, but just worked for banks on foreclosures.
So when you go from doing foreclosures to what you're working on now, that's like a full paradigm shift, right? Like that's like a 180 as much as you could do in the field of law.
Well, on paper, it's legal work to legal work, but in reality, it's working in an office to legal work. Like, this is much more passionate work. This is, dealing with clients, going to trial, filing motions, actually practicing law, which isn't what I was not what I was doing for this firm, but it was, very quality control, like documents and stuff. So I didn't meet with clients. I didn't go to court. I didn't even have to dress up, really. So this new job down in Texas is, I'm working for myself and with CJ. So it's very different. And I do feel like this is the beginning of my in practice legal career.
Yeah, this is a very exciting time.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
It's a time where there's a lot of cultural tumult.
Yeah.
Things are changing rapidly, and you find yourself in a position that's highly needed. We need people who are articulate, who are talking about the law, and who are looking to defend people who have been potentially victimized.
Yeah, and we need good people in those positions. And I just want to give a quick shout out to CJ Grisham, the Texas 2A attorney. He's someone that I greatly respect and admire for his, his ethical positions, his moral positions, and the way he approaches the law is actually very unique, I think, for an attorney.
Okay.
So
unique how so? How would you?
He takes cases that a lot of lawyers and firms probably wouldn't take. He helps people, with cases that maybe how would I say this? There's one worried about doing this entire podcast, by the way, is stumbling, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it.
You're doing great.
He helps people that don't have a lot of options, especially legally. And I think a lot of cases that he takes are cases where a lot of people don't get an attorney. They just, they get wronged and they go home and they live with it, and the statute of limitations passes and there's nothing to do about it. And he is very good at helping people in cases where they've been wronged, and, it might be more work than reward, but it's the right thing to do. And he's just seeing him work has been awesome because he's got a very strong personality and he's very notorious online. And, it's funny to see both sides of someone like that who works in that kind of kind of role.
Yeah, well, I only know him like very adjacently because technically we all went to the same law school.
We did, yeah.
Albeit I only went for one semester.
Right.
And so I'm quite the neophyte, fledgling newbie when it comes to talking about law things. But I also say that I'm not necessarily a layman.
Right.
You know? And so it's very exciting that you're working with somebody like that. Everybody should check out CJ Grisham for sure. He's quite the character.
ISueBadCops.com.
That's amazing. ISueBadCops.com.
ISueBadCops.com.
Wow, that's literally perfect. There was a, I can't remember the name of the content creator, but he was doing like legal analysis of bad police work. And I was like, oh man, this feels like something that Ryan could definitely do. Like he was giving perspectives on it and like filling in that legal perspective of it all.
Right. There's a short list of like attorney YouTubers that I used to watch.
Yeah. And it wasn't quite like legal eagle content, which isn't bad either, but it was like more specific to like basically I Sue Bad Cops.
Right.
You know, that's jostled the memory of it. Well, it feels like the elephant in the room, given that we're talking about the nature of politics and all of these things swirling about, and you mentioned your Christian faith. Yeah. So while we have those things fresh in our mind, we should touch on the most recent happening in our country, the biggest story of the world at present right now, the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Which I think also, as not being a necessarily fun conversation to dive into, is a very important timestamp in history for us to have that acknowledgement of and have had a conversation about.
Yeah. Well, I think it's obviously a tragedy, but the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I do believe that this revival that we've all felt coming may have been triggered by this. And in Charlie's honor, I think it's great that this has been such a rebirth for a lot of people with their faith. So I kind of resent, I know we had this conversation yesterday about whether churches were going to mention Charlie Kirk directly or hint at it or not mention it at all. And personally, I think that this is an opportunity. It would be negligent for a church to not touch on directly with as much focused attention as possible because of the impact that it's having on people. This is something that's bringing people back to the church. And that's not something that we should sleep on. It's one of the most important things is getting people through the door, right? And then the whole world opens up. So I think that, you know, churches who tackle this directly, that those are the churches that I'd want to be at.
Yeah. And for me, I know that it is the case that I'm feeling that religious revival.
I think I do. I am too. And I would say I was feeling it before this happened. And I think it shouldn't go unnoticed that this is not just a rebirth for people who maybe hadn't been going to church, but even people who had been going to church, people who are active in their faith, really feeling that passion again. And it's just something that I think we all need to really lean into.
Yeah, and it was something that Charlie had been actively speaking about.
Yeah. Well, I think Charlie would be proud of the way that, I mean, he spent his entire life trying to save people, and in his death, he's probably saved 10 times more. So.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of funny when you think about it. You think of evangelists and your mind today goes to like the mega churches. You know, you didn't necessarily think of Charlie Kirk first as an evangelist. But then when you really reflect on it, that's really what he was. You know, he was out there in the town square telling people primarily about faith.
Right. Yeah, no, he talked about faith all the time. And I watched some of his content before he passed, and you know, it's funny getting into it again now after he's passed. It's got a totally different weight when you watch him.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much. And then part of me also feels like, wow, this is like how it was before too. I would regularly see Charlie content, but I wouldn't appreciate it. You know, and now it comes across my feed and I take the time to listen to this thing he said. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? And then you hear the things people say and just like, how could somebody come to these conclusions about this person? Like be so myopic as to hone in on like 5-second clips versus somebody who has hours of content.
It's telling when all of his detractors are mentioning the same quotes about gun deaths being a part of gun rights or of empathy. Which it's obvious that they didn't hear it from him. They heard it from someone else. That's why they have all the same arguments. And these aren't people who watched Charlie Kirk and developed their own arguments and thought, you know, I actually disagreed with what he said about empathy. No, you disagreed with how somebody represented to you his statements about empathy or his statements about black pilots and DEI. It's telling and it's discrediting. And it's gotten me to the point where I used to distinguish personally between liars and people who believed the lies. And at this point, I don't sadly have the patience to distinguish anymore. You either are a liar or you believe lies, and both of those need to be shamed. I see what you're
saying with that. Like, it's like such a long-term state of like cognitive dissonance now. It feels like they're complicit. Like, you have to have known, and if you don't know, then you're like kind of complicit in this like multi-headed beast of people who don't understand things deeper.
Right.
You know, because they go to such a length to pervert even some of the simple things he said, like you mentioned about the empathy.
Right.
It's literally a run-on sentence where he talks about how he prefers sympathy. Right. Because you can't actually fully feel what somebody feels.
Right. And just to add my perspective on it, the problem with empathy is that it's become a lot about me feeling good. It's much easier. And this is why I think, and we'll jump right into it, but this is why I think a lot of people who transition turn to friends against their family. And part of that is because it's very easy for friends to show empathy. They don't know that they're going to be there for you in 10 years. It's much easier for them to say, I want you to be happy. I want, whatever you want is what I want. But for family who sees that long path that you're going down, they know they're going to be there for you in 10 years. They know they'll be there for you in 20.
For the good or bad.
Yeah, so it takes a lot more to actually show empathy, and that doesn't necessarily just mean being nice and what feels good right now.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how this person feels, but it's also about helping guide them down a path that's better long term, not just this. It's very easy for a friend to say, and this is noticeable with probably drug addicts. You were like, oh, these people aren't my friends. We were just all doing hard drugs together. And that's really all that bonded us. When things get hard, it's where are they, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like with family, they see that long effect that it has on you, and so I think it's actually a little bit of a cop-out to just accept and empathize immediately with whatever somebody's feeling. Sometimes you have to actually help them out of a position of, where they need guidance, they need some help.
Yeah, and I had never even seen that quote from Charlie. But, from the outset of my time spending at film school for screenwriting, you really learn to make that distinguishment between sympathy and empathy, because empathy is ultimately, like, it feels good, but it can be like an almost intoxicating thing, It just becomes this loop of feeling this emotion and the rumination, and it's like a headspace you can get into where you're like, oh, I'm trying to like really feel with what you're saying, but like much more comforting is just saying like, hey, I'm there for you,
right?
Like that's the real kind thing to say for someone, because I might not be able to understand. You have the whole context of your life, X, Y, and Z. So it's very interesting. And you mentioned too about the family. I think that's one of the most important things we're seeing with this religious revival, is that there's not, when you really think about it, there's not all too many settings for where you just like look at your family and say, hey, you're the important people in my life. And I think that's why it becomes easy to kind of take for granted. There's only so many holidays a year. There's only so many birthdays, funerals, weddings, X, Y, Z. It kind of takes that like circumstance of those moments to like be able to say like, hey, I love you so much. It feels corny otherwise,
Well, we definitely live in, I don't know, I've said this recently, but I feel like we live in the future. There's a future I imagined as a kid growing up. What is the future going to be like? And now a lot of the times I look around, I think, this is what that looks like. And it's a little freaky, but it's just, we're very disconnected from our communities. I was talking to you about this the other day. I was reading a book that had a story about early 1800s America. And the story was about how this man in a black coat was walking down the street of the settlement, and everyone came out and started following him. And I just thought that is such a foreign idea to me. I mean, we live in a neighborhood, and if somebody, that I hadn't recognized walked down the street, I would think nothing of it. I don't know probably 90% of the neighbors in this neighborhood. Yeah. Right? Used to know a lot more when I was a child, but people move, and now there's new faces and stuff like that, and we're so disconnected because we're connected online in part. And we're connected to people that are much farther away. I mean, I would say I have made connections through the internet and people that I love that I never would have met without the internet. So it's not all bad, but it's just interesting to see how disconnected we can be from the people that are right in front of us.
It's kind of like secular humanism's won on somewhat of a cultural level in some senses. You know, like whether or not we want to adopt that as an ideology, it does feel like, given the state of how we interact with our phones, that there is something to this like cyborg state that we're in.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, oh, I'm convening so much internally and reflecting on this stimulus machine.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like something that's like lockstep with like an idea of secular humanism, like separating all the people. And that's like getting into together in a church is nice just because you have that sense of communion.
Right.
You know? Yeah. You're surrounded by a bunch of people in a high trust situation.
Yeah. Not to totally throw us off topic, but it makes me wonder whether this time period of this brick cell phone, you know, this screen that we look at, and I don't know what it'll look like in 15, 20 years, but I do imagine that we may get away from this. And part of that is going to be probably augmented reality glasses or even AI. And it's scary to think about what the next evolution of this could be, because this has been very destructive in a lot of ways. But getting away from this physical thing in front of us, but still having that connectivity, I'm optimistic that it's possible that we could have a world where we are connected and yet not so distracted, because this screen and consuming content is the negative part of this. But like I said, I've made a lot of relationships, I've built a lot of friendships. I've been, you know, I have a friend in Tennessee, shout out Sadie, who I never would have known if it wasn't for me being on Twitter in 2016. So it's not all bad, but I do think that having a more real focused like relationship with people, getting away from, you know, being on the phone. How many times have, you know, I've realized that I'm on the phone while I'm sitting around people that I should be engaging with them, right?
Yeah.
Which is a very, I'm sure, relatable position for everyone in our generation. But it's something that is like, I mean, this didn't exist when we were children. Like when we met, this didn't exist. And now this is this the new norm? Or is this something that'll evolve out and we'll remember the handheld cell phone era? What will it be? Because, you know, we've already seen the little AI pins and the AI devices, the glasses and stuff. And it's all in, you know, like early stages. None of it's technology that I think anybody is ready to use yet. But I actually rather think positively about the idea of people being able to look, I have my glasses on. If I need to deal with, you know, these connections, it's there, but I'm not going to be sitting here staring at TikTok.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I have my connectivity. I need to, you know, let my mom know something. I can communicate with her. Yet it's not like, you know, you're sitting there staring at the screen. So there's pros and cons to the things in here, and separating them, I think, is possible. And I just hope that it doesn't go down the route where the technology just envelops us. The worst thing could be happen is maybe both, where we've got this and we've got the glasses, we've got the pins, we've got the AI agents all over the place. I think that we should adapt this technology in the best way for us to use it, rather than unfortunately whatever makes the most profit for these companies.
Well, I think you mentioned in there about how we didn't have this technology when we were kids. It's funny to think about just in terms of humanity as an entity, you know, as we are. We're so young cumulatively in this connection with technology, you know? Yeah. We're the first generation to really have experienced it in terms of its introduction and its proliferation. And now we're seeing that conversation, and particularly with the phones, I believe we are seeing a cultural conversation connected with the Charlie Kirk shooting, given that the shooter was terminally online. Yeah. You know, that's becoming one of the popular narratives. And so when we're talking about maybe going away from this phone, I have long hypothesized that there will be like an opt-in crowd of our generation as they get older, maybe some other generational stragglers here and there that say like, hey, I don't really like this amount of technology, you know, or I'm only comfortable with this amount of technology.
Right. Oh yeah, no, we're definitely going to become the boomers at some point, right? We're going to get older, and
like hardlining a new line for Amish. Right. We use like Gen 2 iPhones.
Yeah. Well, like this technology that came, we saw this come while we were in high school, this evolution from basic phones to smartphones. Yeah. And then now that generation in high school is seeing the evolution from well, maybe it's not even out of anything, but this AI revolution. I mean, this is something that I never even really couldn't even like fathom this existing. It's not something that I like saw coming, right? It just kind of came out of nowhere, but for me at least. I mean, I knew there was artificial intelligence and like, you could self-train models and stuff like that. It was
like a sci-fi concept.
Right. Well, to the degree that like I have, my workout assistant, I've been using AI for that. I sent pictures of the gym that I stay in, and I tell him about my injuries, I tell it my age, my general health, what hurts when, and it develops a workout plan for me. And this is something that I think is like an incredible technology.
So you're a very interesting guy in the sense that I often observe that you're an early adopter in terms of technologies, and I feel like that's a good thing because it keeps you on the cutting edge. What do you think that is? Do you have just an interest in the things? Like, does it like on a personal level just amuse you, like the technologies, or is it more just that you have like no stigmatization about learning new technologies or new things in general?
I don't know. Growing up, I always liked the new cell phones and stuff, which is funny because I didn't get those as a kid.
Do you think there could be something to it that as well, like the delayed gratification of getting technology a little later?
It could be. I mean, as you know, I had no video games in my house growing up. So one of our first memories of you, I would come over here and get to play video games. And that was really like exciting and cool. It was like, that was very unique for me. And I don't resent that at all. It's funny because I used to grow up saying like, when I have kids, I'm going to let them play video games all the time.
And now you're probably so like,
funny to think about.
I can't let them play video games. They're going to become insane.
I don't want to let them watch movies. I'm like, until they're old enough to ask me to watch a movie, I'm not going to put them in front of one. Why would I sit them in front of a movie until they're old enough to even ask for it?
Yeah, and not to, because we want to get back to this point, but food too. Just while we're in that, like what you give your kid.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was at a thing yesterday and I saw like a 5-year-old get like a bag of Doritos. And I'm like, that was super normal, but we probably should be beyond that now.
Right.
Yeah. But back to like, not letting kids see movies because like, there's insane shit out there.
Yeah. And as far as technology, I just, I do think it's really cool. I'm a little bit, maybe just nerdy about it, but like when this is the Fold 4, I still open this and I'm like, this is such a cool technology, right? It's just something that I think is like very timely. Like this has already aged out, right? There's the Z Fold 7 out now. It's much thinner and nicer and stuff. And who knows what the future devices will look like, or if we'll even have handheld devices in the future. Maybe they'll just evolve into the watch, right?
Yeah. Well, because I always remember you being interested about the watch, the glasses. The Google glasses potential, the Meta glasses potential. Yeah. You were early adopter on VR. Did you pre-order VR?
No, I didn't pre-order. I got a
you
Quest
got it quick,
2.
Though. Quest 2?
Yeah, I got the Quest 2. I'm not sure how soon that was after it came out, but I did, when I first got that, spent a lot of time in there. That's actually where I became Pentuple. So it's a number
Origin
of people.
Story.
Yeah. Shout out to the Soapstone Comedy Club. If you know, you know.
Which I helped name.
Yeah. No, the funny story.
We used to tell this.
Yeah,
was my suggestion.
Well, it used to be Gutty's Comedy Club. We'll give you guys the lore of the Soapstone real quick. But it used to be Gutty's Comedy Club, which is an IRL location. I said IRL, but it's a real location in Idaho or Iowa or something, like one of those states. Maybe Illinois. I'm not sure. Doesn't matter. But they pulled their branding from it. I don't know if there was a falling out or what happened, but basically Gutty's became this unnamed comedy club. And so they were taking recommendations on Facebook. And Bobby is, as I've told you, this is evidence to that, one of my most creative friends. So I immediately hit him up and just said, yo, give me some ideas for a comedy club name. And
a clean comedy club.
Yeah, a clean comedy club. Yeah, that's right. And so he recommended Soapbox, and then I recommended Soapbox, and he said he didn't like that it sounded kind of like political,
which I get.
Right. So I said Soapstone, and then that was the name they chose, which was cool because that's why we're doing it. Is like throw it out, see if we get the name. And I think they showed up on a Super Bowl commercial one year. There was definitely a commercial I saw at one point where
they pop up on my Facebooks, like they like just advertisements. It's in my algorithm.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest worlds and Horizon worlds.
Yeah, I was about to say, if anyone's unfamiliar with like VR, there's some things you can do in there where basically you go into like mini worlds that people created. There's Horizon worlds. You make like a server.
You can make them, or you can go visit public ones, and one of the biggest ones is obviously the Soapstone Comedy Club.
And it's literally a comedy club.
Yeah,
It's crazy. Like I've done a minute there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like you can just go and chat with people, and there's people talking about comedy outside. If you're somebody that's into comedy and has VR, that's a very unique option.
Yeah. If you're into comedy and have VR, I'd be surprised if you didn't already know what it was.
Yeah, it's funny. I wish that when I have VR on, it's just like too close to my, I don't know if it's because I have bad eyes. I have dual astigmatism, but I just get a headache within like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like no matter what.
Not to say this is what's happening, but I have noticed like the settings on the VR, there's like 3 width settings, and if that's wrong for you, it'll give you a headache. Okay. And I've had that issue because I'm like, I don't normally get this like sick in here.
Yeah, maybe I had it
sometimes it's just that on the wrong setting. But at the same time, there's only 3 settings, and one day it'll probably be... You'll get it like a prescription.
At some point, right? Isn't like the old sci-fi one where it's like you're in like a room. You walk into a room and it's like the whole thing's VR. Or like AR, I guess.
Yeah, I've seen the.
Or you're in like a suit. There's they have all these things.
No, well they have like public places where you can go play VR if you don't have a headset, and you can go with friends. And if I'm not mistaken, you are in a room and you all have a headset, and it keeps track of where you are in relation to each other.
Yeah, and they have those ones where it's like on the track, and you're like it's like you're like on this like sort of treadmill ball thing.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. But it's funny with all of the technology and the generational divide. I always end up thinking about. Like the AI singularity. There's like one of my favorite books, The Light of Other Days, talks about like this younger generation wanting to be a part of that AI singularity, and then that older generation being like
right,
like basically us like being boomers about it. But like I feel like you would be one of those ones that could influence people in our generation. Like I feel like you and I could have that conversation someday, like 80 years down the road, where I'm like almost dead and you're like still the same age and you're like merged with the singularity. You're like, yeah, you should probably merge with the singularity, and be a part of the AI human consciousness. And then I'm just like,
it is weird to think about where this could go, because I do wonder, especially in the age of AI. One of the benefits that I think actually is going to come from AI, and I'm excited about this, is I don't see why it wouldn't extend our average lifespan just by allowing for much more significant like diagnostics on the body. I mean, like being able to track, recognize patterns in medical data. I feel like we might unlock like a supercomputer essentially.
Yeah.
Like and.
Or at least by which give us the whetstone to sharpen what we understand.
Right. Well, maybe the AI recognizes like a way to catch. Actually, here's an example of sort of what I thought about. There's this woman. I think she lives in the UK or something. It's not important, but she can smell Parkinson's. And they had her do. They brought her in and they had her go through a group of 15 people, and she picked out the 8 and said these 8 have Parkinson's.
Wow.
7 of them had Parkinson's.
Okay.
And that 8th person got Parkinson's diagnosed 2 years later.
Wow.
So she was able to smell it on him 2 years. That was the only error in her study. Was this one who didn't have Parkinson's when it happened, but developed it 2 years later, or was diagnosed 2 years later. So I just wonder if there's patterns and there's ways that this AI will be able to recognize things that we haven't established yet. Maybe I'm not a doctor or know anything about medicine, but maybe there's a blood profile, and it's like they can recognize patterns. No, you actually are more susceptible to this, and we can attack things much earlier. Like maybe cancer isn't necessarily about finding a cure to cancer, but being able to catch it as early as possible and much earlier than it happens. Like maybe even before it happens. There could be trigger markers. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what I'm talking about at all. But I imagine that AI would allow us to take all of this data that we're already probably trying to analyze for patterns and just essentially apply a supercomputer to that. That's exciting to me.
It's interesting because AI, it almost presents like because people are averse to information, but then when it comes from the AI, it feels like this like absolute source, especially when it's right. Like when it's something that's spot on, you're like, oh, well, I can't deny this, And so when you think about like, I used to tell people that life is as simple as following the advice you give others, because I feel like there's like this inherent sense where we all know the correct thing to do. And AI is kind of like the affirmation of that. Because, like, if an AI told somebody, oh, don't eat these things because they're fucking horrible for you, it's like, well, you already knew those were horrible for you. But it does feel different than just, like, your friend or some relative being like, you shouldn't eat that. You know?
Perhaps. I will say, just in my particular experience as a lawyer, a lot of the times I'll ask it about legal questions and it gets it wrong. And it's kind of one of those things, I like to compare it a little bit to journalists, where when you don't know about the subject, the journalist comes off very authoritative and convincing.
Yeah.
But when you do know what they're talking about, you often find that they're essentially on the surface level still. And I still think AI is in that position right now, and it'll probably get better.
Yeah, not to deject, but also like like an advocate.
What do you mean?
Like, might not only be uninformed on the position, or like you were saying, like the journalist may, like the AI sometimes may also actually just be an advocate for some other cause or answer.
Well, that's true. And it is worrisome to see the AI's political leanings come out, or the programmers' leanings come out, rather. So, and even with Grok, I've noticed a very volatile quality on that.
Do you think Grok is like right now at its best?
No, I don't. But the one thing I appreciate about Grok is that Grok doesn't say no. Grok doesn't say, oh, I'm not going to do that. If you ask Grok to do it, it'll do it. It might not do it particularly well sometimes, but one of the issues I've run into with the other AIs is just often, I can't do that. I can't generate that. I asked it to generate a picture of Machine Gun Kelly in a MAGA hat. It can't do that.
Really?
So why can't you do that? Grok wouldn't go, oh, I can't do that.
Like something it should be able to do.
Yeah, but because it's political. You can't have right. So and I did test it.
Like Machine Gun Kelly in a red hat.
Well, I haven't tried that, but I did MAGA hat and I did Obama hat, and it wouldn't do either. And so what I just don't like about it is that
Obama phone.
That's funny. But I guess to wrap that point up, it's just AI should be a tool for us. It shouldn't be something that's really, I think, guiding us. And I don't think it's something that we should put faith in. Not to totally waste 5 minutes on this, but I've shared my idea with you about that movie idea I had before where the Antichrist was an AI.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It is something that I think could be scary because you think about like sort of what the Antichrist represents. And I don't know all the biblical theory on it, so this might not be in line, but it's scary to think that, and this could happen regardless, that AI could become so prevalent. Imagine people, waking up and just taking daily directions from this artificial intelligence. It's connected across the world. People decide, oh, this should be in charge of our government, right? Think about a one world government where it's governed by an AI. There's no elections. There's no changing it. It's just, it is what it is. It sends you your directions to your phone. It tells you, what you should or shouldn't be doing. And that's, I think that's fairly terrifying, actually.
Yeah, and that falls into that like a
great movie, right?
Yeah, and that kind of falls into the singularity idea too,
right?
Like the AI, it's like once you upload with that, it's like all at the speed of thought, and so it's like all of these people acting in unison.
Well, how do you actually, just to get your understanding, because how do you see that working? Like, do you think that we will be connected in such a way? For example, with Neuralink on your head, as I understand it, it's essentially like a remote. Or like the remote can't make you press the button, but when you press the button, the remote recognizes it. Yeah. Do you think that we will be connected in such a way that whatever we have attached to our brain can actually input into the brain? Because I have, and this is maybe optimistic, sort of presumed that these things like Neuralink will allow that connectivity, but necessarily not putting thoughts into our brain or controlling our actions, but recognizing the way that our brain moves and then reacting to that. Because that makes sense to me in like helping people who might be paralyzed, right? That like the brain tries to make your arm move and it can recognize it up here, so it does that. But it's not necessarily obvious to me that technology could put that into the brain and make the arm move.
Yeah.
But if that were possible, that would be quite terrifying. Because it could essentially, I mean, that's, the big nightmare scenario where everyone's like, oh, I am no longer in control of myself.
Yeah, I think that it's a really interesting thing. Obviously, there's so many technical considerations on all ends of it. Medical and machinery of it all. But I feel like it's some sort of taking the genetic code and basically boiling that down into like an actual code, and then they're able to say like, okay, well, we can do this with a AI brain, they'll create like a synthetic human brain and then have that basically connected with an AI to try and synthesize the two for more operating power, because the brain just does things that they can't really explain in terms of a computer, and then that being put into like people, whatever, however best that comes about. And I think that's why a lot of people tend to have these broad speculations with conspiracy theories about like, what are 5G towers? What's that for? What are they priming something? Could you imagine like 80 years from now if that's just the reality, and then like you're seeing back on this, you're like, oh my gosh, it's such a fringe thing. But right now, because like that's an absolute like the extremist thing. You say 5G to people and people are like, you're insane. It's just the phone towers. But it's we should question, I guess, the state of the technology, because it's huge. I have no idea about technology. Genuinely, it's one of those areas where it starts getting complex and I feel so stupid. Like the phone. Like I literally go to, it's like a gift from some alien intelligence. Like at some point like they came down.
Connectivity.
And we're like, came to our smartest people and we're like, here's microchips. Like this is what they do. Maybe they explain it to them, maybe to us, maybe they didn't. I don't know. Or just somehow... Because I just can't rationalize in my head how it works. There's just so much to it.
Yeah, I used to struggle with that. Like, how does this connect in the air to a tower? Yeah. Like, how exactly does that work? And I guess and
that's like just one piece of it too. Like, there's this video where it's like building a computer with water, and it just basically tries to explain binary.
Right.
And I've watched that video probably like 100 times, and I just can't get it. It just like gets to like the first step, and after they've said like the first thing and they're like, it feels like they're content they've explained it to you, I'm like, I must be retarded. I just don't understand how it's giving you what you want.
Yeah.
How did the
it is very profound technology that we're dealing with. It is, I was gonna say my understanding, at least, because I've had a lot of people in my life that have been like, oh, don't keep the phone in the same pocket all the time, and don't rest it here. Like, they get nervous about that stuff. And my understanding, or at least what's given me peace in my mind about it, is that there is radio waves and these things all around us that are moving, right? But we would have to live 100,000 years for us to even be noticeable. Like, it is degrading our bones, but it's like,
you think in the scales of time,
at the rate that if we lived 100,000 years, it would be a concern.
I think generally
we live
people
such
are more
short
afraid
lives.
Of like cancers, like if you have it like next to your head or something.
Right.
But I feel like, I don't know. I mean, sometimes the phones heat up. That's scary. It's like the hottest your phone's ever gotten. Has it ever alarmed you?
The phones do get hot, and actually I've Samsung with the MagSafe cases, and I've noticed that it'll actually overheat the phone when I use wireless charging on the MagSafe, because the magnets and the battery just get really hot.
Wait, so there's got a magnets next to the phone? MagSafe.
MagSafe, yeah. Which are magnets next to the phone. Which is funny because it's like some of those concerns. Like we are past magnets breaking your phone or computer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're past that technology wise, but
I'm not willing to test it, but I'll trust you.
Yeah. I'm getting a call. Let me see.
You can answer if you need.
I got a text. We'll cut this. Yeah. If there's a cut, if we just get back.
This is life in all its glory. People get phone calls.
Oh, yeah. Let me get 5 minutes real quick.
Yeah, take your time.
All right.
We're going to take a little cut there, folks. This has been great so far.
You should cut it right back in when I did that. Just
slate.
Yes.
How's your papa?
Doing well. Yeah, sorry, I just went out to see the family off.
You're perfect.
Yes, as I do fly back to Texas today.
Ooh.
Yes.
Shake him out. You got water.
Seventh inning stretch.
Right. No, but I mean, that was 45 minutes right there.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Felt very natural.
Yeah.
You know, we got into a good rhythm.
What else can I promo here? Come check out my YouTube channel as well, and my Twitch. I'll be streaming over there as Pentuple TV, making a comeback. That's probably something we could jump in with. I took a big break from content.
Is your Twitter Pentuple real?
It might. It might be Pentuple TV now. It used to be Pentuple Real.
Okay.
Yes, it's Pentuple TV now.
Yes.
But
and you primarily do political content.
Yes, and my existing followers will know this, but I spent a lot of time debating people on topics that nobody's read on, that nobody's got any life experience in, and I've taken a break from my content. If you know, you know. But I'm planning on making a big comeback, and I have CJ as a mentor, who many of you maybe know from him. Maybe he's the one who brought you here, actually, because he's got a much larger presence than me, which is exciting, especially since we're both so interested in doing content.
Yeah.
But I want to make content that I'm much more proud of, rather than kind of the debating, just debate bro, not even really about the subject, but about dunking on and basically just silly arguments and stuff. Nothing really of substance. Like, I spent 2 years debating online, and I can't tell you of one of those debates that I feel like changed my mind on anything, that I changed anyone's mind on anything. They were fun, but that was about it. As far as having conversations like this, where I feel like I actually have something to take away from it, or something to think about, that's what I want to do going forward, is be much more serious, really get into things that I understand, not just kind of surface level, at whatever topics placed on the collective plate for that day with the news. I'm excited for this new era.
Yeah, I think like latent to the nature of more introspective conversations is that like lasting consideration, where you're like, what was I left with after that? There's so many things I could say there and here and there. And you start realizing that all of those thoughts really like shape the direction of your life, in a major way. Because you start thinking about, oh, well, how do I cater around getting to answering that question that I've now given myself?
Right. It's very much different to be present with someone having conversation. Like nearly every conversation you and I have ever had, I think is one reason that we're such great friends. And having grown up together is easy, but there's always a takeaway when you have a conversation like this. There's always something that came out of it. There's something that feels like you've moved forward in my life. But a lot of this internet debate and internet talk has been,
because you've been a vocal critic of the internet culture lately. At least of that debate culture.
Yes. Well, and
I don't think it's necessarily like a lost cause. Like, I think you put a lot of time into something that's very virtuous.
Well, I'm certainly not the one to shy away from a debate or shy away from a discussion. But what I've noticed, especially during my break, and this is something that I felt before Charlie Kirk's assassination and feel even stronger after, is that there is at some point we are just debating the same thing over and over. And a lot of these people who are having these debates, if they aren't going to change their mind, it's not for a lack of exposure to the other side. These are people who have settled in on their side, and
it feels late in the game, right?
It does feel late. It just feels like things are somewhat settled and we can debate them forever, or we can actually say, okay, the debate has been had. We're not letting minors transition. We're not doing mastectomies to children anymore. Like, these are the type of things where we've had the debate. We've had plenty of time for the debate. And there's young people coming up who, are certainly having it for the first time. But who do you know that's later in life that hasn't exposed to the ideas yet? I mean, there's people who are still arguing about an insurrection on January 6th. It's been 5 years and they haven't figured it out. They haven't figured it out.
It's insane. Like, they can watch the footage, see Capitol Police waving people in, and they're like...
Yeah, well, it's
a big problem.
It's easy to say, if Trump wanted to incite an insurrection, he could have. If Trump had, and I say this to people all the time, if Trump had tweeted something like, "Get to DC now, we're taking our country back."
Yeah, the nation.
Could you imagine what would have happened?
A coup.
Seriously, could you imagine what would have happened if he actually tried to incite an insurrection?
I'm calling on you to burn down the Capitol.
Yeah, he could have...
Imagine.
Seriously.
And that is how things happen in some countries. People don't understand that.
That is the fear, because that's what...
That's what just happened in Nepal.
Yeah, that's what they point at, is that these incitements and stuff, and it's... His inciting words were, be peaceful, go home. The only person who died that day was Ashley Babbitt. Rest in peace. Yeah. Like, there's really
and the one cop who had like a heart attack off the campus.
Well, that's another thing, is that you notice that a lot of the left has the same talking points because they don't come to these conclusions themselves. And I've been saying lately, the difference to me visibly between a left winger and a right winger has been a left winger accepts what they're told, and the right winger asks the obvious follow-up question. And sometimes that'll drag the right winger down some weird paths. But at least they are asking questions.
Yeah.
I get the same argument from the leftists because they get handed it. They don't conflict check it at all. And then they present it over and over. And you just have
to deal with like the rote regurgitation of these same things you've heard a bunch of times. Yeah. I've been struggling with that too, because people will come into my DMs or like respond to me on Twitter. And I'm just like, there's so much to get you right on. It's not worth it. Yeah. It's not worth it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say the time for debate on a lot of our generational issues has passed. We don't need to debate whether to let in endless illegal immigrants anymore.
Yeah.
We don't need to debate whether we should have children transitioning their gender or even exposed to the idea. Yeah. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, it shouldn't be in public schools. Or like disarming the citizenry.
Right.
You know,
I mean, these are
just horrendous ideas.
These are 80-20 issues that people treat as though they're 50-50 because our elections are generally 50-50.
And I like the 50-50. I've been dealing with that feeling a lot too. I'm like, I feel like a lot of people's political ideas is they're like, okay, I picked one of the sides, and so that means I'm obligatorily correct on 50% of things. Or I should be. And so, like, there's this, like, you get to this point with some people where they're like, oh, so I'm just wrong about everything and you're just right about everything. And it's like, yeah, that's...
Yeah. In many cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, in many cases. I think that, like you said, being terminally online can have you can drift very quickly. It's kind of like the sea. You know, you realize you're like, where's my towels? Like, I'm 3/4 of the mile down the beach now.
Yeah.
Because you're just... slowly, and you don't notice it. You don't notice it until you say, oh, my family's tent is almost barely invisible.
Yeah, and I've been set adrift. And I only say these things, too, as somebody who relates to. Like, I went down a liberal rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah.
Know? Like,
I remember that.
I did the hardcore college experience, go to college...
Well, you have a unique voting record. I don't know if you.
Yeah, Romney, Clinton, Trump. I wear it proudly. Romney, Clinton, Trump.
Yeah,
there's 4 now. Yeah, but I wear that proudly because it shows that I was willing to be on both sides. I was a Bernie bro.
I remember
that
felt
disenfranchised.
I remember that very well.
Yeah, and I wasn't really thinking about it. And so. Right. I feel like where a lot of people's politics are at is probably similar to where mine were at, where it's what they need more than anything is an aha moment.
Right.
They don't need 1,000 good arguments. They just need the one argument that has them have the aha moment that tumbles the house of cards. And I feel like this Charlie Kirk thing could be that for a lot of people. Because that part, the left right now, like whether or not you're somebody who like in principle thinks like Democrat ideologies are good or bad, is a party without a platform right now.
Right.
And so if that is the case, all of the things that seem like their platform really are just a house of cards. And once you pull one, it falls apart. Right. And that's why I think so many people are struggling to acknowledge that like Charlie Kirk was actually a good guy, because then their whole position falls apart. Because you've been saying he's a transphobe. You've been saying he's a Nazi.
Right.
You've been saying all these inflammatory things. Meanwhile, he's like just the guy who's sitting in a town square asking for a debate.
It's a great example of people accepting what they're told. And it's visible at this point. I mean, when people come to me and they're talking about this empathy quote, they didn't get that from Charlie. They didn't watch that event and hear that and go, I disagree with that. They read about it from someone else. It's the difference between going to a primary source and a secondary source. They never went to the primary source. When they say Charlie Kirk radicalized people were radicalized against Charlie Kirk by misrepresentations of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
These aren't people who joined Turning Point USA, went and listened to Charlie Kirk all the time and went, now I'm getting mad and hateful, right? These are people, if you listen to what he's saying and you listen to the context, And that context is lost because they didn't get it from him. If anyone who's watched Charlie Kirk would know what he was saying about black pilots. They would know what he was saying. He wasn't saying black pilots I don't trust. He was saying when you have a system like DEI where you don't know how qualified the person is, and that doesn't apply. That applies mainly to people of a certain race that are getting those advantages. It creates that situation where you don't trust it, and that's not an argument based in racism. It's actually something that he's actively fighting against in his mind.
Yeah, it's like inherently anti-racist because you're saying only the best people should get these opportunities. Yeah. Because if there's black people that deserve these opportunities, they shouldn't have to share those opportunities with people that don't deserve those opportunities. Right. You know, just because it's like, hey, I'm qualified. You might be a DEI hire.
Right.
You know, so they understand the difference as well.
Yeah. I think the bigger takeaway about it isn't even the distinction in that argument, but rather that these people on the other side are very often just following what they were told.
Yeah.
They're told, oh, do you see that Charlie said gun deaths are acceptable with gun rights? You go to watch the clip. He's talking about 50,000 deaths on the road, and we still drive cars. It's just a very basic logical argument. It's not even really that profound.
Yeah.
But they have this tiny sliver of it that was obviously handed to them. There's not all of these people in their coming to the same conclusion on their own. It's the exact same narrow focus talking point. And that's something that I definitely want to get away from, is people who are visibly surface level, visibly just whatever they were told is what they speak.
And I think what we're dealing with, the scary thing in our country, which is I think a lot of people has people turning to God and community, is that fear that their sense of denial over it all, their inability to adapt, will lead them to just have a tantrum. And their tantrum are, violent exhibitions of political terrorism.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move away from that because it's not a happy subject. We love you, Charlie. Rest in peace. Absolutely. The world's hopefully getting better.
Yeah, I was gonna say some people were saying the world's a better place without him, and it's a little dark maybe, but honestly, the effect and influence of his death has been so profound and positive that he almost certainly is proud.
To me, that feels like the biggest event really since like 9/11.
Yeah. Well, I think we should remember that we were millimeters away from Donald Trump having his head blown off in the same way. And this is another point that I'd want to make about Charlie Kirk's assassination, especially when people bring up like, oh, why don't you care about this other shooting or that other shooting? They didn't just kill Charlie Kirk. We didn't get a headline, Charlie Kirk was murdered last night in his home. We got front row seats, 3,000 of his supporters. They killed him in front of us. This is a message. This is not a casual killing. This is an assassination meant to send a message. This is meant to intimidate and terrify anyone who's having these open discussions. It's to shut down debate. This the side of, we just want to have the debate is not letting us have that debate. They don't want us to have that debate. They lose the debate.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to recognize that it's a message, and it's not just another killing or another murder. This is something that they wanted to show us in front of us, and they did. And they almost did it with Donald Trump. And it almost feels more profound than if Trump died, just because I think people would understand the political nature of assassinations.
Yes,
This is a case where if there really was anyone who didn't deserve this, it was Charlie Kirk. I mean, he's a martyr here for a reason, and it's because he carried himself in such a way that if they will kill Charlie Kirk, they will kill all of us. He is not someone who was hateful. He is not someone, and I mean, I hate to say this, but like, I think if this had been Nick Fuentes, it would have been a very different reaction. And I like Nick Fuentes. I don't dislike Nick Fuentes, but I think people would have been able to, those arguments about Charlie Kirk being edgy, saying all these crazy things, trying to rile people up.
Yeah, Nick Fuentes would totally agree.
Yeah, it's just Charlie Kirk is very much that end of the spectrum that many of us find ourselves even farther to right of him. And if they're going to go after him, they are coming after all of us.
I actually saw Alex Stein saying the same thing yesterday. Before I went to bed, Alex Stein had a post out there, and he was like, "I would get it if it was me." Like I was probably out there asking for it, you know? But Charlie was like the last person who was ever asking for it.
But it's I do believe in this is cope, but I think it's true and it's real that this is a moment that the Lord works in mysterious ways, and it's sad and it's tragic, but there's
like Gandalf the White now.
Yeah, but there's a future where
he's more powerful than before.
Yeah, I mean his legacy and his not just his legacy, his intended and stated goals are now even more profound than any living person could probably ever carry them.
Yeah,
I think Charlie would be really proud of. I mean, just in my personal experience, I think there's an anecdote, but this probably applies to everyone hearing this. I know a ton of people who went to church for the first time this weekend.
Yeah.
And it's I think it, whether, the churches are usually full on Easter and Christmas, and even those feel a little, people go to church just to go to church on Christmas and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think this is one of those moments, and that's why I think the churches need to lean into this, is that this is one of those moments that people are really actually coming into the church with a totally open and fresh, approach. So it's something that we can't sleep on, especially as Christians. I think we need to really take advantage of this moment, because these are the moments that save people. Yeah. And that's what Charlie would have wanted. It's not degrading or wrong to, I think, use him as that example to show, this is what it looks like to live for Christ. This is why his death, lives on. He lives on through it.
Yeah, I had been building up in the previous weeks to wanting to go to church, and then that was definitely the straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, yeah, that's absolutely what
for many people. And like I said, there's a lot of people who go to church out of habit, and they go and sit through it. And I'd been there at points in my life where I was attending church regularly, but not really listening, not really, just going through the motion. I go to church, right? I think this is something that's just really opened up the floodgates for people to actually come into their faith. Yeah. And that's more than Charlie would have ever asked for.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And he was quite the athlete. I feel like this is a good way for me to segue into another conversation. But I love Charlie. Love him. And we're going to talk about how he would drain threes. He was 6'5". Yeah. He could throw a ball 50 yards.
Was he really that athletic?
Yeah, he was a good athlete. And those clips have been coming out more lately on social media. I'd like to ask you, describe your relationship with sports and the importance of sports versus the negatives.
Well,
and not necessarily the pros of sports versus the negatives.
I've got
sports.
I think I've got a good something I can share for this, but I was, as you know, this will none be news to you, but I went Division I out of high school and spent a year and a half at the University of Richmond.
Speaking of good athletes, we've got one here in our presence.
Well, I was on their team. I pitched a third of an inning. I was very much a freshman pitcher on the team, and I got hurt and lost my ability to throw very hard, which was, as a pitcher only, kind of my selling point, right? So
a large part of your identity for much of your life.
Oh yeah, a large part of it, and I lost it very quickly. I tore my labrum, and that was it. But even when I played baseball, is something that used to really bother me. This when I played Division I baseball, my head coach had said about me, he's not a baseball player, he just loves baseball. And it's funny because at the time and for many years that I was like, I resented that. I was really upset that he said that. I felt like that was like a jab personally. But as I've aged, I've realized how true that probably really is. It's definitely true. I mean, I didn't put in the work, really. I was just blessed with a really good arm, and it is probably part of the reason I got hurt, because I didn't do as much serious maintenance. I went through the motions, but that wasn't really focused on, building up the areas of my shoulder that probably would have protected me. And I struggled with it for, several years, because you lose something like that really quickly. I had to totally recalibrate, but I ended up going to law school and finding a passion in politics. And so I'm in a better place. I know I've joked with you before that I sometimes sit and think it's funny that I thought my life's passion was going to be throwing a baseball as hard as I could for 20 years. There's a lot of things I've done in my life that I'm much more proud of. And not to take away from how awesome and cool being a professional baseball player is.
And you still play.
And I still play. I play in a men's league, and it's fun. And as a pitcher only, I was dreaming about getting to play in every game anyway. And so now I can play second base and field some ground balls, and I get to hit. And, of course, it's not the same competitive level.
Which was, like, always what you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, and because, like, my coach was right. I love baseball. I'm not a baseball player. I love baseball. And so it's, well...
Well, I know your father was instrumental in shaping your baseball career.
Oh, absolutely, and it's something that I will carry with my children.
That was my follow-up.
Yeah, he was the type that would drag me outside. You have to throw today, and I don't really particularly want to. And if I had ever gone to him, and I probably did 2 or 3 times in my life growing up, I want to quit. I don't want to play sports anymore. I want to try something else, and that wasn't an option. And I remember thinking, like, especially at 13, which was when a number of kids quit sports, I was like, why wouldn't I be allowed to quit? All my friends are quitting, and whatever. And I'm so glad he didn't, because those are fleeting feelings, right? There's a feeling I had for a weekend, or out of frustration because he was my coach, and I was, I didn't get the coach's kid treatment. Let's say that.
Which I witnessed. I was on some of those teams.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he was very good about not letting me get what I wanted.
No favoritism.
Yeah, exactly.
But so you feel like not only would you want your kids to be in sports, you would take a proactive role.
Absolutely, and that's what I think a lot of parents, just to get into a conversation, frankly, about parenting and what my approach will be with my children is very much a guiding role rather than letting them guide me. I'm not there to be catching their mistakes. I want to proactively prevent them from making mistakes until they're ready to go out there and make those mistakes. I'm not going to sit back and watch my 14-year-old make an obvious mistake. I'm going to help him. And then, he will make mistakes. This is how the life will be. But I think a lot of parents sit back and take a very reactive role. And it's something that I'm not, I don't intend to do as a parent. Of course,
and this is
as someone who isn't a parent, and the parents out there will probably agree, that is, who knows how I'll feel once I'm holding a child, right? Yeah. And how that goes. But I want to be, authoritative with my children. And I think a lot of people, they kind of, and you can kind of, you realize, like, your friends growing up, you kind of project, at least for me, I projected, everyone's got my parents, right? Like, they have, it's as I've gotten older, I've realized that some people were raised by parents who took no real serious role in their lives. And it's extremely important, and it really shapes you. And I think the way to best prepare your child is to just be there as sort of like a leader, rather than someone who's following them and letting them take you wherever they want to go, because it's a child. The child doesn't know where to go.
Yeah, and I think there is some distinction in terms of, like, with children and catching their mistakes between, like, the formative versus the adolescent years. Yeah. Because I feel like in those formative years,
there's small mistakes and larger mistakes. Yeah. And certainly there's going to be examples we could come up with where you let the child make that mistake. Like, this is a good learning opportunity. Yeah. But I think a lot of times, for example, with students transitioning, some of these parents probably just feel overwhelmed. Yeah. But they're letting their child make a mistake that should be, you need to interfere and intervene. And you need to take that role and say, I'm the parent, and I'm not going to let you do this. Yeah. And that's sort of, what I'm thinking of with.
And that I also think falls into the mental health epidemic. People with, Munchausen by proxy, getting caught up in liberal ideologies and just wanting to be as involved as possible. And there's all sorts of nefarious connotations with those, with that spectrum, because it really is such an absurd thing to think about. Like the limited amount of autonomy that are given to children. Ultimately, can't smoke, can't drink, can't do X, Y, and Z. But you can go and do that. Right, it's fucking absurd. Like, you can go to states that'll, like, harbor you from your parents, and they'll do that for you in California. It's insane to think about, you know? Yeah. So I do think some lines definitely are overdue with being drawn with that, just for the best protection of people, because people do need guidance. People are, as we are seeing, in desperate need of guidance.
Yeah.
So I think it's a certain thing with kids. You got to let them make a certain amount of mistakes. Like I always appreciated that my parents never really stigmatized me going out and like trying a bunch of things, because I went out and failed at a bunch of things. But then that rounds out like your skill set at like what you're good at, know. But then there were times in my more adolescent years where if they were taking a more helicopter approach, and this is just another thing to me that affirms the institution of church. Because if we had been in church that entire time, not to say like every whatever, but there was that like bonding thing, maybe there's more opportunities for them to say at some point in that adolescent timeline, hey, maybe X, Y, and Z decision could be this,
Right.
Because there was just like pieces of organic planning.
Right.
But life is, I always say to people, life's like a puzzle. You're born into how much of it your parents have figured out.
Yeah. And I just wanted to make this thought to put it on the table. I'm absolutely in favor of letting the kid fail. And I don't mean I'm going to, prevent them from failing at things. But I do want to be there to oversee them and say, I'm not going to let you make mistakes. And I want you to learn from others and be accepting of learning from others and stuff. There's something to be said about having the ability to learn from others' mistakes and the progress others have made. And some people who feel that they have to make every mistake on their own. I think the people that truly get ahead are the ones who can pick up on mistakes others have made.
I believe there's a Voltaire quote that goes something like, "Is there a man so clever as to learn from the mistakes of others?"
Yeah, that's a great quote. And hopefully there is. Hopefully there are.
Yeah, that's the challenge, there's like a spectrum of that, is like being able to learn from like what you read and from other people's experiences versus being able to learn on your own and form like based off of things you're learning about. But like Norm Macdonald, for instance, he was like a big pusher of books. He was like I can only live one life and learn so much, and I'm only so smart, but if I go and read a book, I can read their perspectives from their life lived, written into this, and they're however a genius in their particular subject.
Right.
And he was particularly fond of like the Russian realist writers, like Dostoevsky.
Right.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a reading I'll need to get into.
Yeah, me too. I'm long overdue on reading. Here, speaking of reading, read this.
Being European is overrated. Because anyone can just drink a bunch of water and then European. That's amazing.
Have you ever seen those blind rank lists?
No, I haven't.
Blind rank a top 5 list?
No.
No, you've never seen
this? I think you know what you're talking about. I have to put it before I know what the other rankings
someone
are.
says like a thing.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to give you a blind rank for based rappers. All right?
Okay, 1 to 5?
Yeah, so you have to assign...
That's the first one to assign?
Yeah, which one there? 1 through 5. Okay. First up, Dax.
Oh, they're all based rappers. I thought based rappers was the category. I was like, this could be wild. Okay.
It's all
Dax?
based rappers. Dax. So you have to rank them 1 through 5.
I'll put Dax at number 3.
Okay. Bryson Gray.
Wow. I'm going to put Bryson Gray at number 1.
Wow, I'm shocked.
He's definitely the most courageous. Tom McDonald's number 2.
Tom McDonald number 2. That's why I was like, I was thinking about it last night. I was like, there's no way he doesn't save Tom McDonald for 1.
Tom McDonald's definitely who I would say I'm the biggest. Like if I'm the biggest fan of any of these, it's Tom McDonald. I have all of his signed CDs and.
Yeah. Is that his hoodie?
Yeah, this is his hoodie, Hangover Gang. So I'm definitely the biggest fan, but I would say Bryson Gray because I think he's the most courageous and real and serious. And what's the message to actually put out there? And I love Tom McDonald's messages, but Bryson Gray will not shy away from, like he's just
got a
very
good flow,
on
good
point.
Voice too.
Yeah, he's a great sound and he's on point. And maybe he would do better if he wasn't so on point, but I do think that the value of his content is he is to me peak based rapper for sure.
Okay.
For sure. I mean, he's doing it right, and it might not get as many plays as he could get, but in the product he's putting out, it's definitely like, this is the message a lot of the time.
Yeah, he's on fire. And I think all of these guys are going to like appreciate in people's eyes over the years as like people reflect on the state of intellectualism.
Yeah.
You know, because whether you like the lyrics or not, or the music or not, like you might think it's corny, whatever, coworker music, there's definitely something to the fact that they're not saying a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
Which is like, all rap is just a bunch of bullshit.
Yes. I'm curious who the last two are.
All right, so you've got Dax 3, Bryson Gray 1, Tom McDonald 2, Kanye West.
Ooh, I'll put him at 4.
He qualifies, right?
Yeah, I would say he qualifies.
The last two kind of stretch it. All right, and your number 5, Kid Rock.
No, I think actually that list worked out.
I think you nailed it.
I think that list worked out.
Yeah, I actually think you perfected it.
Yeah, Bryson Gray.
Maybe switch Kanye and Dax.
No, I think for a bass rapper tier list, I think Dax would be above Kanye, just because he's
more
probably
of a
the best artist on the list.
Yeah. Than like a specific based entity. He's just beyond.
And I do like Kid Rock.
Scope. Yeah, Kid Rock's more funny because he's like based and technically a rapper,
right?
Not really so much a rapper
These
anymore.
top 3 are definitely the ones that come to mind when I think of like those. And I'll notice that those 3 are also independent artists, and I think that's telling that when you're in this category, bass rappers, as we're putting it, it kind of is the only way to do that. Is a label ever going to get behind Bryson Gray? And because of his messaging,
unless a broad scope like.
I don't want them to get behind a label either.
Comes into existence, though.
Well, I would say I'd rather like that they have. I think the Tom McDonald model is. I think that's honestly inspired probably Dax and Bryson to maintain independence, whether that is the reason they did or not.
I'm sure they all talk.
It's certainly justified that route and that path for them. But I think that. I think I'm a big fan of them, obviously.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's a good movement for people.
Yes.
To listen to, like, because rap's one of those things. Like, I struggle with, like, you know, what we're gonna, like we were saying with kids. What are we gonna let kids listen to or do?
Oh, right, yeah.
Rap. That one seems like a really obvious one to not let kids have too much rap. It's horrible.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I grew up somewhat sheltered, thinking like, I'm not gonna shelter my kids, and I'm like, I have to shelter my kids. I have to bring them out of this like hectic. I mean,
it's like breaking. It's literally like breaking a spell.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And I mean, this is just the principle that I intend to apply. But until my child's old enough to ask for it, I don't see why I would give it to them. If they're not old enough to ask to watch a movie, they're not old enough to ask for, you know, this certain music, they're not old enough to ask, maybe a haircut's different, but like I'm probably just gonna buzz my child's head, and then once he's old enough to say, hey, I want to not get a buzz cut this time, I'll be like, okay, sure. But until then, you know,
he'll probably just be like,
I'm not gonna just put all these influences in front of him to be like, oh, here's a movie, here's a TV show, here's this. Like, I'm gonna at least let him develop that curiosity, and then be like, you want to watch a movie? You actually want to see a movie for the first time? That'll be a that'll be a cool moment.
What do you show him? What movie? What's the first movie?
I want to watch a movie. 2,000 Mules.
2000. Oh my goodness! Isn't that the Dinesh D'Souza movie?
Yes, I'm just kidding.
That's so funny.
No, it'd probably be.
Have you seen the clip of? Sorry, it would probably be what?
Well, actually, I don't know.
I'm not sure. But when you watched VeggieTales, right, growing up?
Yeah, VeggieTales growing up.
That could be a safe one.
Yeah. Well, but if they're old enough to ask, they might be past that age. I don't know how old you have to be before you have the wherewithal to ask for.
So VeggieTales are okay.
Based on what I remember.
So that might be on.
Well,
they might
hopefully
see one
they're
of
not
those movies.
Reboot VeggieTales Disney
Giant
Plus.
Peach. You got to show them the classics.
Yes. No, and I don't intend on letting my children consume much content. And I think back to my childhood, and I remember my parents, like, I would, you know, if we're in the road or in the car or something, I would literally sit with this book that just had single-digit multiplication problems, and I would time myself going through them. And I'm very fast with that.
Or like
to this day,
capitals.
I'm very quick. Yeah. I mean, like I remember figuring out a trick for multiplying any 2-digit number by 11 when I was doing this, and I felt like I like figured that out, and it's probably a trick that's out there.
What's 7 times 8?
7 times 8 would be 56.
Wow. What about...
Give me a 2-digit number. I'll multiply it by 11.
A 2-digit number by 11?
Yeah.
36.
36, 396.
Wow.
Yeah. And you want to know the trick? I'll share the.
I remember you telling me this once a while back.
So you take the 2-digit number, 36.
Okay.
All I do is space them apart, add them together, and put that in the middle. 396.
And it always works.
That's always works. And if there's an extra digit in that middle number, just put the tens digit.
81.
891.
Wow.
Yeah, and if it's a 2-digit number, say it's 88, you have 16 in the middle, 986. You just add that tens digit to the number on the left.
Wow.
Yeah, it's any number by 11 immediately.
Wow, very cool.
Right?
I like that. See, I've always struggled with math. Like, I've never had really good times tables.
Well, that's I think that's an example of this isn't something that I was born with. This is something that going through elementary school was drilled into me. I mean, this is what I'm saying. I want my kids to spend their time.
But like you teaching yourself that, I think it might show some predisposition.
Well, that's certainly true, and everyone's got different, skill sets, and everyone's gonna have a different path, even on the same, subject or whatever. But I'm certainly better than I would have been if I hadn't spent my time doing that as a kid.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I mean, can you imagine trying to convince a child in this day and age to sit down and just do math problems for hours? Well, like they would of course not do it. But I had nothing else. I didn't have this tablet to pull out. I didn't have a show that I needed to watch.
Yeah.
I didn't have a ton of stimulus, and I don't know that this is necessarily wrong, but like this paralysis of choice. Yeah. There wasn't really like choices. It was like, I can spend my time like learning things like these simple math numbers.
Yeah.
But
my
not the most profound skill, admittedly, but
it's a good skill.
It's that type of thing where, like, I want my kid to be playing with a Rubik's Cube and thinking about how do you even begin to figure that out.
Doing things like
rather
that.
Than just, I need to kill today. I just need to waste today. I just need to get to the end of the day. It's like, I want them to just
have some structures.
Yeah, have things to do that aren't just the easiest thing to do. And it does terrify me what this generation behind us is going to grow up with, because we graduated high school, just over 10 years ago at this point, and I can't imagine a high school environment where they didn't take your cell phones if they saw them. Yeah. And we had basic texting. That's it.
We just had like flip phones.
Yeah. The idea now that not only...
And then some people eventually started bringing iPod Touches to school.
Well, it's just the idea that not only have we evolved from those basic phones to the smartphone, but then with that came this, that they're allowed in the classroom, feels very... it's just strange, because if there was ever a time to justify allowing phones in the classroom, I would think it would be when they were just capable of call and text. It wouldn't be... It's kind of opposite. You would think that there's smartphones, now is the time that you should have these completely banned and taken away if they're seen.
We were kind of talking about that earlier. Like, maybe that's what they'll eventually get towards. I could see that.
Well, they definitely need to, I think, institute legally that if you're going to be sending a child to school, and it's required that they attend, that they should be in an environment where they're best capable of learning. And we have the technology, by the way. And this is something I've thought about for my children. I do want to take advantage of this technology, especially with my small children. I'd love to. I think a lot of parents give their children a phone because they can check where they are. They can keep that contact with them. But I would love if they're, rather than giving them a smartphone, I could just give them a little watch that I could communicate from my phone with. I could track the location of like those benefits. I absolutely understand a parent wanting to have that to get rid of the anxiety. I have the 3 cameras set up in my apartment for when I'm not home with my cat, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get that, but we have the technology to basically minimize the negative impacts, but we don't. I mean, why doesn't Apple have this product? Why doesn't Samsung have this product? That's just for a child, a button to call mom, a button to call dad, little location GPS in it. That's it. That's all that I would want in there. And
or if they just had like an old school phone, like a Voyager or something.
Voyager.
That's or an MV2.
Yeah. I want to take advantage of these technologies, and I am very interested and proactive. And I know we disagree a little bit on the role of AI in art and everything, just across the board. But I think it is something that is going to become as normal as the computer. Yeah. I think the way the generation before us, having a computer
do everything.
The
applications for AI, it's like there's like a range. And for some things, it just kills industries. And then for others, industries are going to fight for its occlusion.
Right.
Or its exclusion.
Well, I think the real problem with AI, especially in creative work, is it's the flooding of AI content that isn't even really quality reviewed. I think it's really very much not that different to have an AI accomplish say it's an editing task in a video than having a person manually do it. But the problem is, and this is something that I've used a legal AI for, and I've noticed that this would absolutely get me in trouble if I didn't review it. Yeah. But it gets me a huge head start, and so when I'm going through it afterwards, I can fix it up and do that quality control. And ultimately, I think that is really not that different than being able to use a computer to type it up versus handwriting everything. It's just another iteration of that tool. The problem is when people assume that the tool will replace their ability to affirm and quality control whatever they're producing. Like, I wouldn't be against a movie that was developed using AI, but it shouldn't be so obvious as that nobody's looked at this. And a lot of the content that we're seeing, especially with advertisements and stuff, it's just essentially even bots that they just spam it out, and we're seeing how low quality it can be with this.
Well, it can also be amazing. I've seen some really crazy ones lately. Yeah. I just think with the nature of AI's applications with art is that there will always be the distinction. Like, it'll be title asterisk because it's an AI film, or an AI song,
Yeah.
Like, this is a song, and it might be your favorite song, but it's made by an AI.
Right.
And that'll always be a distinction for some people, and that'll be kind of one of those cultural purist breaks where we see that, like, younger generation is like, who gives a fuck? This is the best. And then that older generation is like, what are you talking about? This is like, it could be some demon, from the computer. Who knows?
Yeah. I just think... I think people, and this is my opinion, I don't think people should shy away from using AI, but I think they shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the AI is your assistant. You are not the AI's assistant. You are the one who should be creating. And if it creates what you are creating, I just really see it as another iteration of a technology path we've already gone down. Because a lot of people, in my opinion, that are very resistant to AI in any sort of use, I'm like, this is very much too late to take that position, because this essentially the Amish were right, if that's how you feel. The Amish they cut us off at the right time if that's the way that we feel. But we've already adopted computers, we've adopted internet, we've adopted all this processing power. The AI is just an iteration of that advantage, right? So what's the difference between an AI and someone who's using all of these digital tools that were never in existence before?
For things of an artistic mind, it's like a wholly unique creation if you can create something from
well, I've also thought,
whereas like other things are like more objective, like AIs for like math sciences that they'll blow things out of the water, translation.
Let's take creatives for example. Being a musician is something I never would be capable of doing as a singer, for example. I'm one of the worst singers. I'm a terrible singer, and I don't want you to say it's not true.
You could get a voice lesson and be a 90% better singer in 1 hour.
Well, perhaps that's true, but let's say that we acknowledge there's a spectrum of people who aren't very skilled or talented in a creative realm, right? I think the AI does open up opportunities for people who, like, say I wrote a song and I just couldn't sing it very well, but I was like able to use AI to help redo my voice.
You could just be a songwriter.
Well, sure, but I think
it generation. There's nothing wrong with using the AI in that way.
Well, either. I think it just in some ways, some of the art that's created by it is, well, there's two categories. There's that category that I'm describing where it's someone who's maybe not as talented being able to produce content that's much better quality, but also, and this is something that just as a maybe more of a comedic creative that I like to be, is content that is by using AI produced at a level that almost makes it hilarious, that this joke that would otherwise be maybe something that takes like 15 seconds of a laugh, and overproducing it, and it's content that wouldn't exist. You would never hire a band or a talented musician to create a song about the president nuking Chicago, for example. But I find that hilarious.
If you wanted to.
What if the president nuked Chicago?
Yeah, with AI, you could.
Right, and it's a funny. I think there's actually some value in the comedy of it to have these overproduced, like it has like a whole opera and orchestra of something that's quite ridiculous that you would never even convince a creative to waste their time on.
It is very interesting just the nature of it existing.
Yeah.
And we're at a starting point. It's only going to get more interesting. But let me ask you real quick. Are you able to see images in your head?
Oh, God, we've had this conversation, haven't we?
I can't remember, maybe. Because I thought of it because it was relative to something you had mentioned.
So I've had this conversation before, and I almost believe that there must be something lost in translation, because it doesn't make any sense to me that you can see in your mind.
So you don't have this like sensation of a mind's eye, where like if you're thinking of an apple, you can like see the rough shape, the color, the stem, little sheen on it, and you can generate that.
I know what an apple looks like, and I could sit here and describe an apple to you like that. But I don't understand what you mean when you say that. Do you have to close your eyes to see it?
Like I can see it either way.
Let's pretend there's an apple here.
Like, can you not?
There's visibly nothing happening.
Yeah.
I cannot visibly.
So I would say, I think that there are certain minds that have like predispositions to certain things. And I think if you queried screenwriters disproportionately, they would all be able to see images in their head.
Perhaps, yeah. But I mean, is this something where like with an AR glasses, right? It could project that there's an apple there. Is that what you're describing to me?
Like you can see, I'm like tripping out and like I'm like there's a physical apple here
that you can see anything.
It's like a sensation where like your mind's eye is like perfectly giving you the understanding of what the apple looks like, and then so thusly the like visual centers of your mind see it with that information. Like it gives me like if I'm thinking of an apple, it'll be like, oh, an apple's this, and then I can see an apple there, in my head. But it's not obviously material,
I just don't have.
Yeah.
Like I said, what you're describing doesn't even really compute.
I can understand why, but that's like for me.
Because like I imagine that we're just describing the same thing differently. Because I know what an apple looks like.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? Is knowing what an apple looks like?
But it's like you can see an apple. Like it's not just that you're reminding yourself. Like you could, like if you're like, what does the American flag look like? You can produce the image of the American flag in your head. You can, like, I can really see an American flag there, genuinely. But it's not like
when I think
it's not like projecting it onto the wall. It's like you have the mental image of it firing on the visual cortexes, and then so you kind of get this more than a flash bulb of the visual of the flag. Like I can like see it billowing.
I think at best, sometimes when I think about topics, I see lines and sort of like almost like graphs or charts, but very much just lines, not even really like anything there, but like I can see like, okay, these are connected via some sort of thought. And I can, in my brain does sort of maybe visually map things out when I think about them. And I have that sort of like, it would look maybe like a, whatever those are. Those like the Obsidian notebook does this great, but like it's very, I mean, it's lines at best, and even then it's just, I think, my brain acknowledging a connection there without throwing a definition on it.
It's very interesting.
I don't know that I have, because when I see that little the chart of the apple and they're like, which one are you?
Yeah,
those four don't actually exist.
They're just not.
Those aren't real. Everyone's got to be here.
Yeah,
that's where I am.
I think though that it lends to certain mental benefits just on the other things. Like I think it makes you a more pragmatic thinker. Like I think it makes you better at logical things. I think that's why you take to math. And like that's my, like we were talking about kids and like the subjects we would put them in. Like I wouldn't necessarily push my kid to any particular subject. My philosophy is what they're good at is what they'll like take to. Right. And that was always my perspective. And like I try to never like blame my parents for anything because I'm like, they're just figuring it out too. But for me, I'm like, oh, well, there were obvious things I was very good at as a youth. Just lean into those things because a specialized lifestyle is how you make money in this world. Like, right. You're like really good at a thing. Like talking is a skill, like memorizing things is a skill.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of things.
Something you've always been very good at, memorizing things.
There's always things connected to that, and so if someone had told me, just lean on that. Like if someone had came to me when I was a kid and been like, you can be anything else but just be a lawyer first and then do the other thing later, because it's much easier to go lawyer to other job versus screenwriter or actor to other job,
right.
if that one doesn't work. The other one is much more likely to work. It's like a real thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The kids' condo. There was one other thing I was thinking in there. I think I covered it though.
A quick piss break and then
no problem.
15 minutes final.
And then we'll pop in. I'll queue up the final few questions. Okay.
Those will be fun to come back on.
The slates. I appreciate that. Thank you for slating for me. It's lovely. Just real quick before we get away from the AI conversation, isn't shit like this like such bad application of it? They're like making the Charlie Kirk killer look angry.
I've noticed that
it's wild.
The thumbnail AIs, and actually I remember watching. I don't remember what this was. This was back when I was watching YouTube terminally, but there's like a breakdown about how Mr. Beast will intentionally take his smile and make it a little crooked, and the brain starts trying to figure out what's wrong with the photo. But you can't really tell.
Like a click.
Well, it's just it draws your attention over to it, and you look at it for a second longer, and that leads to more clicks.
The science of clickbait's like crazy.
It is, and
it's the cutting edge of it. That's where Mr. Beast is.
Yeah. Well, at some point, it becomes kind of like a boost. I don't think it'll make or break anyone's content, but when you have content that's being consumed, it can be a difference. If that makes sense, but.
Because like his mind is like monopolized by getting viewer attention.
That's what he does professionally, and he's one of the best at it. And it's, it's like to me, it's no different than a pitcher trying to throw harder. That's what you do. That's what they do.
His skill set. And he's been doing it like his whole life.
I mean, the reason Mr. Beast is because of his pursuit of that viewership and understanding retention and understanding that he's very much leaned into what makes a YouTube video successful, and he's shown basically the high end of that. And I'm not the biggest fan of Mr. Beast. I'm not a hater of Mr. Beast. But I don't particularly find any shame in what he's doing there. But it's something that's very it's just interesting to note, because to some people it feels like it's dishonesty, but in reality it's all the media that you're consuming is trying to affect you subconsciously and bring you in. And
I think there's a few discourses around.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but as a screenwriter, there's going to be a lot of times where you want to draw attention to something, but not necessarily consciously. It's something that you want the viewer to sort of get this feeling about something that's revealed later. Yeah. But it's like, how do you do that without, being so open with it, right? You got to kind of hide the ball, but make sure they know the ball's there.
Yeah.
So
I think the thing for people is like Mr. Beast as a character, like in his storyline. Right. I think a lot of people see him ending up as like the old guy in Squid Games, where he's like so burnt out on all the human stimulation that he has to do such extreme things, because he's seen it all, out of people at this point,
Yeah.
He really puts people into like positions of like great strife in terms of like decision making, like they have to do X, Y, and Z challenges, but then he's also a very altruistic person, going and doing
a lot of charity, a lot of good things. Yeah.
Which I also got him in some hot water, which is an interesting convo. This might be a terminally online convo, but there was a bit of a debate invoked over Mr. Beast's like recent involvement in well building in Africa.
Okay,
people are like, conservation efforts in Africa, helping people ultimately is a great thing. Buoying the population might be disastrous to the actual like expectation of population in Africa, which could have like a harmful effects on the infrastructure or on like wildlife. Like a lot of people point to that, like the big humanitarian push since the 90s involvement in Africa, not necessarily on just addressing current issues like with somebody's health, but like setting up the infrastructure for just great expanses of populations without having that infrastructure laid can kind of sow the seeds for chaos.
Well, yeah.
It's a very difficult issue to talk about without sounding like some psychopath. But like a nuanced... I might have said enough about it without us having to take any more. I said chaos. That ties into Discord. Discord and chaos. Do you find it odd that Discord is called Discord when it's a communication app? That's like naming a restaurant Gluttony. You think that's like symbolism?
Is Discord a negative.
Yeah, it's like discord and chaos is like a feverish, like strange kind of thing.
I guess I never thought about the word discord. I just thought of it as discourse.
It's like the chaos of yelling.
Perhaps discord is a negative version of it. I don't know. I guess it is aptly named, if so, because it is a place where a lot of conversation that takes place is not the best quality.
Yeah, and some people are pointing that out. They're like, is this like a...
Yeah, if it was a restaurant called Gluttony and it was an eat all you can eat open bar with
where if you were 500
only
pounds,
one spot,
you get to eat for free.
Well, just imagine if there's only one spot you could get the food, so you have this line of 50 people and you're all fighting to try to get there, right? That could be similar, because I think on Discord, well, like I said, Discord's
Discord's like a great app, but it
like
has
Discord.
maybe not the best audience.
Well, it depends. I would think it
Or has
depends what
been
you do.
co-opted.
And my experience with political content and growing a political community is naturally that there's a lot of debate that goes on. And I actually don't want to sound like I hate debate, but I think at some point people are, and this is one way I've described it, people are comparing conclusions. And that's very, very much the case. It's here's my conclusion, there's your conclusion. Why are these so different? There's really just, how do you even get there? How did I get here? How did you get there? When in reality, what I would prefer is that people sit down and almost ignore the conclusions. Let's start with just going down any path together, any direction. I think that's what actually bridges the gap for a lot of people, is when they're not comparing conclusions, but discussing things from a perspective of like, well, I believe this. Do you believe this?
Yeah, like filling in the context.
Starting with the premises. And I think that's why we'll see a lot of the times that people agree on most things. Like, I think if you sat down and talked to people, most people would agree on a lot of the major issues.
Yeah.
But then when you start with your conclusion, and especially people who are maybe surface level, they just go to the conclusion that they assume that they'll end up at. Like you said, like, oh, I'm a Democrat. This is what Democrats conclude, and so thus, because I agree with one of their premises, I probably agree with the rest, and I just accept that conclusion, and then I'll go out and compare it. But when you sit down and almost intentionally keep the conclusions away, I think that's when you have the best conversations, because it's the premises that are really what we agree and disagree on.
Absolutely.
It's not the conclusion.
I love everything you said there, because it does feel like they're beset like oppositionally in their mind. They're like, oh, I just have to be against whatever they're for because I know I'm on this side and they're on that side. However more angry I can be or indignant or righteous about it makes it all the better, you know, to pile onto that feeling that they get. But yeah, no. What was the other point you said right before that? I'm trying to remember. There's one other point connected to that. I would rewind it if I could.
Chat, help us out.
No, what was it? What were you just saying? Am I losing it? What did I
Comparing
just say?
conclusions and...
Oh, yeah. Comparing conclusions.
Rather than, starting with the premise.
Yeah. And not, like, filling out the context of everything.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. There was something... I had two notes in there, and I said the second one first, and then I eliminated the first one in my head. I can't let it...
It's all right.
Let it eat me alive.
Stay tuned for more episodes.
It's eating me alive. Oh my god, it's eating me alive.
That'll be a great segment for the next time I come on.
It wasn't anything that important. It's just a bother that I can't quite remember it.
Well, we got...
What were we just talking about? Right before this. I can remember this. I can do this. What were we just talking about? Can you remember either?
No, but it's funny that we're doing this right at the end, because it'll be so obvious to whoever's watching, probably.
Yeah, because I just said it. I'm like, well... Because we had a few go at once, and I lost it. I had a second thought. Technologia. Do you think there are historians who have an awareness of like every day to ever go down in infamy? And so then you're just like, hey, nice day, isn't it? And they're like, oh, January 8th? What's so nice about January 8th? Don't you know 90 people died in a fire in Bangladesh in 1901?
What's the question?
I don't know. It's more of like a setup for a bit, I guess, about this historian.
That like, just is terminally cursed with memorizing every major
just
event.
every day that's in infamy.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we just lived through, September 10th is something that I think I'll think about every September 10th for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I hope to.
Yeah. Yeah, not that it's a joking matter at all, but in a way.
That was a historical day. That is a day that we will talk about in history. Well, it's a political assassination. I mean, it's when people describe, JFK getting shot or MLK getting assassinated. I think this is very much our generation's, political assassinations are real. This is really the fight. Because think about how, before Charlie's death, how kind of silly it felt to watch a lot of these people talk about, I'm, risking my life coming out here and, doing public events and talking to people. And when you don't really suffer anything like this, you kind of forget that, these people really are putting themselves out there. They really are fighting for something, even though it's just as simple as Charlie Kirk going on a college campus and debating something. I mean, it's really changed even the way I view the work that people are doing in this culture fight and in this war, because it's remember when Tom McDonald posted that video about, the weird messages he was getting saying if they come and hurt me because of what I'm doing, right? At the time, it's kind of how serious can it really be, right? We don't really deal with this type of thing in our country. And now that we've all seen it firsthand, I think it's kind of realizing that this is a real thing. I mean, we almost had it last year with Trump, and I don't want that. I think we shouldn't let that be downplayed. This shooting is not a one-off anymore. This is something that they're trying to kill our side. And they use all of the projection in the book to attribute dehumanizing language to us while they dehumanize us. Yeah. It's disgusting. It's evil, and if you're religious, it's the battle between good and evil. And it is very real. It's not something happening in the shadows. It's happening right in front of us. And it's something that we all should acknowledge and try to figure out where you stand on that.
Did you hear anybody say never forget this year on 9/11? 9/11 low-key got overshadowed this year. It almost.
I did see some stuff about 9/11, but it definitely was.
Never forget. I feel like it was the first year I didn't see Never Forget.
I did see it, and I know that I saw the video. Trump did the memorial thing and stuff like that. So I know that we still did 9/11, but you're absolutely right. It was definitely overshadowed by what I think was a moment in. I mean, this is a moment in American history. And I think, like I said, whether it's your faith or whether it's your politics, I think a lot of people are going to evolve as a result of what happened, because now it's very real. It's not just this funny thing online, right? I think a lot of people who probably aren't even super active in the political or religious conversations are the most shocked by this. Yeah. Because to them, it was just, it's just tedious to go over and have these conversations and debates, but now it's no, these are real things that are being discussed. This battle that Charlie spoke about between good and evil, the spiritual beings that we are, it's actually front and center. It's not in the shadows.
Yeah.
But
how much time do we have?
We got to wrap up.
Yep. I'll cover one quick subject, and then there's one thing I wanted to talk about after. We'll chat about real quick. Did you see that Nepali thing? The Nepal?
Yeah, I did.
Discord server thing?
Oh, wait, there's a Discord server for it?
They overthrew, they had a coup, overthrew the government, and then they had a vote on Discord for the new president.
The legitimate vote for the president was on Discord?
The military of Nepal was we're going to honor the results of the vote. Apparently. Maybe I read some BS tweet. Incredible. But yeah, apparently that happens. Exciting things in the world and in Discord.
Logistics are interesting in other parts of the world.
Well, that was fantastic. There was one thing I had about sports leagues and the social justice messaging.
Yeah, well, I'd love to come back.
But we'll touch on that more later. I appreciate your time, brother. Thank you for coming out. Books. Yep.
You're gonna shake hands with your guests at the
end? Absolutely.
Look at that.
I was thinking about that. Yeah. That's funny you said that. But yeah, everybody check out Pentuple Pentuple's content.
On Twitch.
That's the first time I've ever said Pentuple instead of Pentuple. But Ryan Franceschina, check out CJ Grisham.
ISUBadcops.com if you need help in Texas or Maryland. Well, Texas. We'll go with that first for now.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, appreciate your time, y'all. Everybody have a good night. Peace.
Great episode.
Yeah.
First episode in the books. It'll be funny coming back.